It's like the feeling of the preemption right now, as for like Lucy right now waking up and basically seeing like not only Natsu but also like Shana as well as like the demon elder from Galloon Island in her room. That definitely was very impressive as well. Like right now Lucy will be totally draining and because like what might have happened will be like it might have been due to like because Lucy might have already fallen unconscious or like into like an unconscious like state due to like that great exhaustion of like the whole Phantom Guild scenario that seems like been going on for long, like after different since like especially since like in the whole Phantom situation has given like Lucy a lot of extreme mental exhaustion. Might be that's the reason for like after different, especially with like Lucy having to like witness like her beloved like fairy little members like struggling so much against like the fantasy just to like protect Lucy. So like I mean and like Lucy would be like only really split might have been like that extreme split in her like in what her confused state as to like what to decide whether like for her to like surrender and basically be taken to her father or like should like basically should her like believe like in her fairy tales built and basically while at the same time having to like witness like the fairy tales numbers like suffering so much just to like to protect Lucy. So like I was trying this whole confused like state like I was like it might have created a lot of like an extreme mental exhaustion for like Lucy and like Lucy might have already gone unconscious and I'm like right now basically waking up and basically seeing like the demon elder from the Lone Island as well as like Nasu as well as Kana in like Lucy's home would definitely totally just feel like the dream that Lucy will be only seeing in her like unconscious like kind of state right now. It's definitely my personal version. Also definitely my personal theory and predictions that I'm still thinking on to basically that like currently right now like Elfman like full body takeover of like his like beast soul with like Elfman turning into this like powerful beast like I'm also like definitely Elfman would be still this time like I'm different like the transformation the full body takeover would be totally different for like Beastman I mean like Elfman and I'm also this time like Elfman would be like fully in control. It's like definitely my first theory and prediction that I'm still thinking about it. So yeah, and I was definitely from this point on, like I was like soul won't be even standing a chance at all against like the full body tech or the soul power of like Elfman is like scenario that I was bring like from this point on, I'm definitely prepping from like the point of like just the soul transformation. I was bring like the fight between like Elfman as well as against like soul to totally be one sided in like the favor of like uh, in the favor of like Elfman is like the scenario that I'm taking. Like Elfman like his soul power is that much extremely superiorly powerful when compared to that current power of soul reflects the scenario that end up with the also the cinema is very impressive that right now with like the beat soul power of like Elfman and the like without much great delay at all like the like Elfman to totally thoroughly power and defeat like soul but like right now those like for Elfman to like still not take souls like the like soul being thoroughly defeated and destroyed to like the point that soul will be like going unconscious and going into like an unconscious state of like scenario that I was put yet like I'm like this man whom I mean, like Elfman whom I'm still pressing would be still in control, even into like this sort of form, would be like not deciding not to like take the life of Sword, yet like seeing Sword in that unconscious state is like the scenario that I'm looking. But like after like taking out Sword, like I'm looking like Elfman would be like in his well remaining in his like his soul form and basically Amber Ribbon like after defeating Soul like Elfman straight away like starting off like the destruction of like the giant castle of like the Phantom Shield is like the scenario that Amber Ribbon like Elfman from one side like straight away after defeating Soul like straight away beginning that whole destruction of like the entirety of like the slowly like beginning like the destruction from one point of like the entirety of like the giant uh captive of like the fans look like the scenario that I'm like because like Elfman would be totally fed up with like the fans that like I'm looking to like even after defeating Soul like I'm looking like Elfman just going on a rampage throughout like within like the giant castle and basically of like the fans and destroying everything that we see within like the fans so like that's happening on one side while like Natsu's fight will be happening on other side while other different like while Natsu's fight will be happening like under the most likely Navy versus for right now there's a Navy for like the scenario where like in Gray's case, like maybe like either Gray like running into like phantoms like an element for member before reaching like that main location where like Jose as well as like those like fan guild members just like wearing like the robe, dark robe, or like I'm saying they might be either fan guild members or like they might be like or those guild members might be like dark guild members that would be like in disguise and basically wearing that black robe to like hide their identity or something. Specifically, might be very interesting. So like the dark guild might be in like secretly right now in alliance with like the fans guild is like the possibility that I'm sitting and person that I'm sitting on to. So definitely it will be them that will be performing like definitely it will be like them that will be right now performing like the Abyss great magic. So like I'm like Gray either right now running into like an element four member or like I'm looking the other possibility that I'm looking like Gray not running into like an element four member but like Gray like like exploring like the exploring like the source of like just like abuse the magic and everything. So like they like reaching that top location within like the giant castle of like the fantasy where like all these like multiple staff members will be with like the rope wearing the rope are like wearing like the abuse magic. So like right then as like they would be about to stop them like and like Jose totally straight away interfering, or like like it would be like an element for at that point, like possibly interfering and stopping the Grace attempt to like stop the movement versus like so it could be one of these two possibilities that I'm looking for the brain version right now. Like, so definitely I got the impression that I'm sitting on those that like it's the reason I think like basically the Abyss magic had I think like reveals to be like one of like the lost magic, like the popular lost magic. So that I'm like if that's the case, then for sure, like definitely like that there would definitely be that alliance between that secret alliance between like the sensitive as well as like the dark Elves and like the alliance might have been totally formed due to that the dark Elves current biggest priority of like a target right now would be most likely like the bear test build. So this question of like the bear test build definitely my good transition and like though they might have found out about this somehow. So like I'm looking they might have formed an alliance with the cinema with the because of like the fairy tales build recently had like scoring like the goals of like the last is multiple times like which was like the symbol guild and then like with like the um at the alive magic like situation like adapted having like the alive magic and all that like they are as well like fairy tales having a fight with like the last and all that. So definitely by now like the fairy tales guild would be like a high priority target for like a bunch of dark. So like I'm looking that way, like and maybe somehow like I'm looking like Jose might have been able to figure that out. So like I'm looking when Jose's father gave Jose this stuff, like I'm looking at that point definitely Jose might have definitely decided fixed in his mind to like definitely to use that situation to his like advantage to like get back and bring back Lucy to his her father. And so he isn't like his father is like he extremely wealthy. Like he might have only funded like and given a lot of money to like the Thanos Guild to carry out this like operation to like get Lucy to her father successfully. So like I was like using all that money, like I'm looking like the Panthers Guild might have not only bought a lot of like not only bought like a lot of like powerful magical items, and that would be like the Jupiter can and all those like powerful like upgradations that might have only happened to like the castle of like the fancy guilds of the Prince. So like that might be the reason for like the fancy guild castle right now might be right now through like that money that like this is the reason it might be like a recent upgrade that like the castle of the planet is right can right now turning to like a giant and even walk and all that. Especially when with reimbursement. So definitely also like I'm also like definitely that Jose might have decided to like take advantage of this situation to like basically like regardless of whether like the fairy tale still that agrees to like hand over Lucy to like Jose or not. Like regardless of it, like Jose might have probably fixed in his mind to like take advantage of the current situation to like destroy like the barricades against him against whom like the Jose might have had like a grudge for like so long. Siraj and envy most likely for so long. Definitely good. And this will be the sources of effective fantasy build right now being like right now would be like stronger than how they had been in like the past. Definitely my vegetarian person. And on top of that, like as part of this plan of like destroying it where it is will definitely Jose might have definitely like form approach to like the dark field and form an alliance with like the dark field. Might have been also what might have happened. Definitely when we and that might be when like I'm looking like Zarok might have through like the dark field like that might often make once a while at least that would be making contact with like the dark field or like that might often make contact from like that might be right now in like a different dimension or like a different realm or kind of like a place would be where like that would be right now hiding in the universe or in this or like the spirit of the would be so like that spirit of the like and the different like would be like often communicating with like the dark field. So like I'm the different when like Jose had basically approached like the seeking alliance to like to destroy like the therapist like at that point I'm just wondering like might have been through sort of that like I'm going like the dark might have totally told like the dark members might have totally or the themselves might have at that point told like Jose has to like the location of like the lost magic abyss for its magic the limit of the temperature so like when the abyss for its magic like so like that might be how like Joseph castle giant castle of like Japan like right now how uh that will be how like right now Joseph will be having access to like the abyss for like the one of like the law of magic like the abyss for magic right now especially in my personal impression right now. So that's why like the name of the story I'm listening right now is that like even though like Edman probably spread and defeated like soul like still like right now with like Edman like going up to like Nora like I'm talking to Nora like I'm like soul will be totally right now using this opportunity to like totally escape this like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm just like after like the current whole interaction between like Edman and like the beast soul Edman and like Nora when like Edman will be like returning back into like the castle to basically like to take down like the remaining element four and to destroy like the castle. That and then like I'm like this man will be returned back to like the castle of like Sanskrit. But like at that point like I'm like this man getting the shocking surprise with like definitely Soul won't be present there at that point. It's like the scenario that I put. Soul would have only escaped by then. It's like the scenario that I put with the premium. That is like kind of name of the encryption right now with like Mara right now noticing all of stuff and like the writing of like the Abyss for magic like slowing down like and with like Mara right now saying like it's the for the magic of four elements like so that name of the encryption that like repeating like the element for like each of like the four members of like the element for be like the key to basically stopping like the Abyss break it's very powerful Abyss break magic. It's definitely my favorite impression. So like definitely like about to bring like the core elements would be like the element of like water, which would be like the element of like earth, which would be like the power, element of earth, like the element core member of the skill soul would be having that would be representing like the element would be having it's like from majority of this magic would be like having like the powers that like represent like the element of earth is definitely one of the so like soul would be representing like the element of earth and like the other element for member of the trans guild that had basically was present along with like Soul while Lucy was initially affected like that like element for member would be like the element for member that represents like that has like the main powers of like what representing element of like water definitely member system. Then there would be like the element of wind as well as then like I'm it would be like the element for member that like Naruto right now is like fighting off against like who would be like representing like the element of fire is definitely my favorite version. And the element of wind and something like the fourth element would be like the element of wind, and that would be like something like equivalently Arya, like I think his name is like the Arya, like the I think like the element fourth member that have basically stolen like Master Macro's like magic, like basically he would be like the element fourth member that will be like representing the element of wind, which definitely that would be having magical powers that will be like representing like the element of wind is definitely my motivation. So like I'm looking like right now with like there being like uh staff robe, people wearing dark robe, in like multiple people like wearing dark robe present in like the very top of like the I think that of like the giant cafe where like Jose is like I'm looking like those multiple people I'm looking right now would be most likely dark field members definitely my preference. So like these dark field members will be having like the power to basically connect like the four element power of like the element four members of like the four element four members of like the band skill to basically to connect like the powers of like the four elements to basically launch like the Abyss Break magic. Like I'm thinking like that would be how like the Abyss Break magic is here right now would be about would be trying to be like launched the second November return. It's like the uh, giant right now like trying to like launch the Abyss Break magic would be in such a manner. Second November return. So like the November return right now would like it would be solely due to like Soul being defeated. But well, like my birthday impressions that right now it would be like solely due to like Sword right now being like thoroughly defeated by Ant-Man since like Sword represents like the element of like that would be like the preparation for like the writing of the Devil's Straight Magic slowed down. It's definitely my birthday impressions. So like I'm just like the task to like basically the key to like stop like Devil's Straight Magic would be like between each of like the four elements or members of like the fantasy. That's definitely my birthday impressions. So like I'm just definitely right now I'm just like it will be great, definitely I'm looking for like within like the giant castle of like fantasy. Like I'm looking like Shirei would be only right now running into like area, like the best element for members with like the powers of magical powers of wind, with the element of wind. That's definitely not visible. So like that, they're like I'm looking Shirei would be having his like ultimate fight against like area is like the scenario that I'm looking and definitely and I was like definitely like since like Arya and the continue with Remington and the different Arya only having magical powers that sense like the power of wind and like the element of wind and like the person is also like basically that doctor had basically who's right now treating Makarov had basically revealed that basically Makarov's powers magical powers have dissipated to like the air like I'm different like definitely so Arya will definitely be having like the power of like the winds to be able to like collect back all that lost magic of like macro as well as like all of the fairy still members like the level of their magic like the extent of like her magic that was like dissipated into like the air by like the shadow beings like the shades of like Jose like I was bringing like their magic as well that might have like dissipated into their air like I was bringing like all of those magic like being able to like be collected back through Arya once Grey would be defeating Arya is like the scenario that I'm referring. So like that's like scenario that I'm referring. Grey initially struggling way to like injury for pouring and defeating Arya and at that point like Grey forcing Arya to like basically collect back all those all that magic that was anticipated into the air. So like I was for like the remaining characters members like the shade creatures like the shadow being had only recently took away like even a certain bit of like their magic like I was like those patent magic would be able to like fully be able to like get back through from like the air through Arya's magical powers. Once Arya Grey would be defeating Arya's like the scenario that I was doing. But like I'm still in the case of Master Macro numbers bring like macro, even though Gray would be forcing like Arya to like basically usually collect back like the magic of macro. Still number three since like a lot of time has passed since like Arya had taken like macro magic and macro magic having participated into like since for that incident since like a certain extent of like time has already passed like and like um, even through the forcing of Arya, like still Arya won't be able to like collect back like the entirety of like macros magic, like the scenario that I'm looking like a certain extent of like macros magic might have after dissipating into the air might have only been permanently lost like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like Arya, even though Arya would be like collecting back all that matching injury. And basically that way, like Surface will be able to like give that collected magic to the of macro back to like macro in time, and that way like macro like totally being safe, and that way solely due to that macro surviving is like the scenario that I'm looking. Yet like I'm looking, Master Macro won't be having his like true strength that he had until like he had lost his magic to like Arya, like basically until that point, like the true power and magical powers that like Macro have like basically for, after like even after returning back like the magic like still Macro won't be having like this true powers back. That's like the scenario that I'm looking. There will be that certain extent of like reduction, permanent reduction like macros, like magical powers and strength is like the scenario that I'm looking. And I'm looking like since like magic it has like connection to like would be what they also having like connection to like light force of like levels and like definitely like through this like incident of like macro. like macro having a reduction in his like access to levels of like magical powers like and something like that also affecting macro lifespan as well. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking do you see like solely due to those incidents in the right now I'm looking like after repeating the vectors this will be repeating like the kind like macro they will be like returning back like macro magic and macro would be surviving still like due to like the reduction in like macros like low quantity of like low levels of magic like which numbers can happen like I'm looking macros like lifespan as well getting like quickly reduced as well. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like macro definitely I'm looking to survive only most likely for one more year like the scenario that I'm looking. So I'm looking like macros to like survive for like one more year and like it will be like I'm looking like it will be like towards the end of like the next year where I'm looking like uh, macro like health and also for like would be like most likely deteriorating and I'm doing like uh macro would be like dying towards like the end of it the next year like the scenario that I'm looking and like at that point like and at that point I'm also looking like a new master totally replacing that after like macro stuff like a new master like totally replacing macro like the scenario that I'm looking and definitely my was the mentioned it's definitely for that new master to definitely not be laxus, but still I'm looking like that new master would be like one of like the member of like the top senior members of like the players guild. And I'm definitely praying for it to not be neither such nor laxus, but like I'm looking like it would be like among like the two or three like unveiled members, senior members of like the fairy still like I'm looking like it would be one among them that I was would be ending up would be like the strongest among like the senior members of like the fairy people and could be that strongest senior member of like the fairy tale skills at that point would be like underweight right now. Like it would be that member of like the character skill that member would be like replacing Macro at that point as like the next master of the character skill. It's like same scenario that I'm developing and I'm developing like that master to definitely be a genuine and a nice person. Unlike Laxus, but like I'm developing that master to be like an extremely like art teacher, just like the scenario like that master I'm preferring like to be seriously strict exactly like kind of like I'm preferring that master to have a lot of similarity to like as fast nature of like strictness is like the scenario that I'm preferring. Yet like that master I'm preferring like to not be like uh to not have any sort of like a villainistic nature that would be definitely would be like a genuine and kind-hearted person, but like will be having such extreme would be enforcing such extreme strict rules on like the heritage guild. Unlike and but like at that point like like uh funny kind of like a scenario where like the heritage guild at that guild members at that point will be totally missing Master Macro at that point because of like the parents still knows at that point would be feeling totally feeling as if like they have lost a lot of their freedom with like the new master with like the new master taking over it's like the winter scenario that I'm also going to bring another to introduction. Also my Victorian picture for like that new master of like the paradigm skills would be like I'm also bring like even stronger than macro even before like macro had lost its like magic due to like area or like I'm also like that new master of like the paradigm skill like so the point like that person I'm going to bring would be like either as strong as like how strong macro was during his prime or like I'm the like that's like the scenario that I'm going to find. That new master I'm going to bring would be as strong as like how strong macro was during his youth, during his prime. Is like the initial scenario that I'm going to bring. I'm going to bring. Okay, so like definitely my different percent right now was like one particular member right now being thoroughly impressed with like kind of like refusal to like give up and kind of like mobile and basically her strategies and performance in like the fight against like the shade of like Jose like so definitely with like him right now saying that like the women in like the players that are like the stronger ones like I'm looking like definitely so that's definitely my Korean question right now that basically there will be like more it wouldn't just be like a casual dialogue that like they believe that definitely member might have said it's definitely my friend is so it's like that's it's like basically currently even stronger than like basically it's one of like the senior member and that way itself like has like totally and even like Mara used to be like a senior priority member as well. And basically that way like basically like and even right now like the person was like Atsa being like not only like senior characters guild members, but like that way itself like us are being stronger than like the majority of like the characters guild members, and even including Natsu and Great currently, and like also uh, Lax as well as like Mr. would definitely be stronger than Ursa. It's definitely one of the relation. So like definitely with this dialogue that basically it's like the woman in like the fairy tales that are like the strong ones. Like I'm just like so like the two or three underwear senior fairy tales members and like them. I'm just like would be all women. It's definitely never the relation. So like I'm just even like the and they would all be ambassadors, they would all be women, and they would all be stronger than even Lactus and Mr. It's definitely my birthday of pressure. So like those unveiled brothers members who need that all women and members like to be one among them that ambassador name. That would be like eventually like one like eventually I want to member and there's something that one eventually like macro will be dying and within a year like ambassador or like towards the end of the year for ambassador macro would be like by at that point I was wondering like it would be like a female therapist guild member, like the senior female therapist guild member who I'm considering would be even right now would be like the strongest therapist guild member. I'm considering to give her that would be like that underweight that female therapist guild member whom I'm considering would be like strongest therapist guild member even right now to the person. I'm considering that it would be half that ambassador of the calling would be like replacing Makaro as like the new master of like the relationship at that point is like the possible possibility of like a scenario that eventually a scenario that I'm going to bring over to the empress. So that's like the name of the impression right now is that the characters will remember that talking among each other that mid battle about like Loki we having right now heading to that place that but trying the like even like the characters remember not revealing where that place is like then just calling it that place because of like that place would be like in activity would be like the location where like I think like a read of that I think like the name of like that chapter right now would have taken Luffy to definitely by the premise. So like especially with like the shades like only in something around like a great a number of like around like all the players who members right now. That would be the probably to so that like the shades uh doesn't find out through their interactions about like the current hideout of Luffy. So this is the reason for like their best members like right now. Calling it that place is definitely member in a way that definitely member. So like right now with like Loki right now heading over to that place like like Loki's definitely especially about the famous that like Loki's like fans might have died due to like a wellness celestial wizard. It's definitely one for membership. So like wellness celestial wizard in like certain past like might have taken the life of like Loki's parents, and this might be the reason for like Loki having like a disturbance whenever like he's in like the presence of like a celestial wizard. It's definitely one of the famous. So like since like Lucy is like a celestial wizard, like and like Loki might secretly deep down have an extreme dislike towards like a decent skill with her. She sees the human friends. So like and like so like Loki this and that time might have had like deep within him might have had that dislike towards like Lucy's definitely not the So like right now with like Loki running towards like Loki right now would be totally running towards so like the impressions that like Loki might be like right now running towards where Rhaenyra I think like had basically taken basically is definitely one of the impression. So like Loki might have seen like Rhaenyra's like taking Lucy to that safety. So like I'm thinking like Loki right now will be following running and following Rhaenyra's the path where like Rhaenyra has taken Lucy is definitely one of the impression. So Loki right now, Loki's mindset right now would be along the lines that basically he would be like maybe seeing absolutely no hope in like the current situation. Because like my personal impression is that like from Loki's point of view, Loki right now would be totally feeling as if like there's absolutely no chance of like really in this like war against like the kind of build like or like the still to be able to like war and defeat like the fans this time will be along the lines of that. Loki would be thinking so like I was looking at Loki right now. Will be trying to like get towards like Lucy to make it to Lucy and to tell Lucy to like basically or either to tell Lucy to like basically surrender herself to like the fantasy or like Loki would be trying to like end this war and protect and save like the predator skills as well as like the game phase by like forcefully taking Lucy and handing over Lucy to like the fantasy guild. This might be like the such intent with which like Loki would be right now running to it's definitely my preference. He will be like, okay, we are running towards like where a rate of what I've hidden Lucy. It's definitely my preference. So like maybe three impressions definitely for like maybe for like Loki to that basically without necessarily delay make it shift to like that location but to that hideout where like Remus Remus has given Lucy it's like the scenario that I'm doing and Loki and something like that have to stealth like using some sort of like a magical item or like something to like basically put Remus to sleep like the scenario that I'm doing and then like Loki either telling Lucy to like surrender or like Lucy forcefully taking like Lucy and basically to and bringing Lucy to that precise location in front of like the Anfield castle and basically Loki shouting out to like the castle to like to basically like basically end the war and basically Loki is like handing over Lucy just like trying to hand over Lucy to like Joseph like the scenario that I'm in. And I was wondering like that way like Lucy entering like the captain is like the and the captain was like the scenario that I was wondering. And at that point I was wondering like Jose is like totally laughing at like Loki as well as like the remaining fairy tale guild members and saying that like at that point I was wondering like Loki totally making his like villains kind of laugh at like the characters at the corporation guild members and Loki and then like I was wondering like at that point like Loki saying like basically as if like basically like that basically the pet skill members totally gotten trick have totally gotten trick due to like them even thinking that basically like that Jose would be like leading their guild and them and like their guild alone just because they surrendered Lucy. It'd be along the lines that of like a scenario that I'm looking and like straight away Jose shouting out to like basically launch like the Abyss Break magic. But like at that point right then I'm looking like the giant like the giant uh, phantoms here castle like breaking apart one by one. At that point, it's like the scenario that I'm doing because like by then like I'm doing like all four of like the element four members would be like getting defeated. That's like the scenario that I'm doing. And straight away like that giant castle, which will be definitely powered by like it's like a reveal that's like totally powered by like the powers of like the four elements of like the element four members like definitely with like all four element form on the spy then precisely will be getting defeated. Even Arya will be getting defeated by Grace, like the scenario that happens. So like the giant castle itself like falling apart on its own once like all four element form members will be defeated is like the scenario that happens. That way like Joseph's plan shouldn't be spoiled and basically at that point itself on the different that Natsu totally finding Lucy within like the giant castle and like Natsu saving Lucy and basically Natsu that getting out of like, the castle as like the castle will be falling apart this like the scenario that I'm doing as well as the remaining characters members will be like coming out of like and leaving like escaping like the castle before as like the castle will be totally falling apart like that and getting destroyed on its own was like in the scenario that I'm focusing on like bring animal for animals. And at that point, I'm focused, right now, my subscribers is that basically at that point, like since like at that point, like the entire the first skill members would have at that point seen that Loki like only betraying all of them and basically trying to like attempting having attempted to like hand over Lucy Lucy to like Joe like so. So due to this, like I'm going like fantastic with the characters, remember like confronting Jose, confronting like Loki at that point, and I'm looking like at that point, like maybe like Loki confessing about like why he like about like him probably disliking Loki and all that. It was like the scenario. Maybe like Loki like basically at that point would be when like I'm looking like Loki's like backstory would be getting revealed in front of maybe like the entire reflective test members and like at only at that point like the entire reflective test members that maybe realizing as to like why Loki has like a disturbance and it is like towards like a disturbance with like towards like celestial resources like and nature population are that I'm looking for. And at that point I'm looking like Ikurimara that would be like making Loki understand that basically to like that like not all celestial are like villainous and basically along such lines like everyone like different along such lines like I'm Ikurimara making Loki understand and like basically Loki finally like resurrecting like basically betraying like the Predators is not of basically the Predators members as well as like Loki and all of them like already forgiving Loki. And basically from that point on, only from that point on, like basically Loki actually starting to see Lucy as like one of his like home basically as like his like friend. Okay, so like definitely on the same person right now, it's like happy totally being confused as to like why that even while like Natsu it's like not sure on the levels of like having magical powers when compared to that of Satsa or like Masaros. still like basically Natsu like basically something about Natsu giving like happy so much hope of like that things would be turn out right. Like I'm like it would be especially due to like that extreme optimism that like Natsu will be having like maybe due to like that extreme nature of like Natsu to like never give up no matter how much like the odds are against like Natsu like it will be like that unwavering like will strong will of Natsu to like definitely and determination of Natsu to like never give up that will be like even superior to that of that even macro as well as like as or even any other charities members would be what like might be like what makes like Natsu like that special one in like that special thing to relatives skill number in like the entire from when compared to the all the remaining relatives skill numbers definitely might on the rate comparison. And that would be exactly what would be like the reason for like not to being that beacon of hope for like the entire thing of like the relatives skill numbers like right now, except for like the senior relatives skill number. But like I was like initially in the recent years are like not to not only making it to like the position of like being like a senior prefect member, but like also like naturally being that beacon of hope, like naturally being that symbol itself of like hope of like the entire and the entire prefect members, like including even like Prince President as well as like the other senior prefect members, like totally all of them like totally probably seeing like Natsu alone as their ultimate hope and basically like even while like the odds would be like extremely against them like even then like they will be all like this basically in the distances that will be placing their hopes on like NASA that basically like overcoming like all that or like even if like all of them say like the scenario that I'm going to I'm going to also, the main member of the reimpressions that like since like Arya was like such absolute peace had basically taken away like then that with the magic of like macro, someone as strong as macro like other from definitely Arya will be that member of like that strongest member of like the element form of the defense that currently like the strongest member of like the among when compared to like all of like the phantom members like including like I engage in like ambassador definitely Arya ambassador would be like the strongest currently like the strongest like fantasy member right after like Jose is definitely member of the membership. So definitely ambassador right now with like Nato making it to like Arya like definitely member of the membership like Nato by himself ambassador definitely not being able to like bring down Arya is like the scenario that I'm looking especially with like Arya having like the element power magical power and based on like the element of wind is definitely one of the remedies. So like definitely since like wind can has the power to like basically put out strong wind has the power to like even put out fire like and also like definitely not so like far that like totally seriously struggling against like the ultimate wind powers of like wind powered like magical attacks of like and abilities of like Arya. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at like so like I'm also like eventually it will be like I'm also like definitely create to like eventually like thrust through like the thrust through like the castle of the fans into like eventually making it to like the precise location and create eventually running into like the precise home like the precise location within like the castle of like fans still were like Nazi to be like fighting against areas. Definitely against the scenario that I was saying. So like at that point when Gray would be like running into that location running into Nasu. Like at that point, I was running Nasu, like Charlie would be almost about to be fully defeated by Arya, like the scenario that I was like. So like I was like Gray at that point, like I was and saving Nasu, like the scenario that I was looking, and then I was running like the two of them, like Nasu and Gray, who always pick fight with like each other, like I'm with them at that point, like even though initially I'm also with them, it's them I'm also deciding to like team up with each other. It's like the scenario that I'm also including most likely Gray that will be telling Nasu that really you know to bring Arya down, like basically that like they would have to like team up with each other, and I'm also like initially Nasu being totally against that, and I'm also like initially for like their teamwork to like not go smoothly at all. It's like the scenario that I'm from. They will be like fighting off against like others, like the scenario that I'm from. But like I'm eventually that teamwork totally happening between that absolute teamwork totally happening between like Nasu as well as like Gray and them Nasu and Gray totally setting their differences apart temporarily for this to basically bring down Arya and basically at that point like with that absolute teamwork and like like Nasu as well as Gray with their combined effort with the how that was different like there would be like bringing down or pouring and defeating and bringing down Arya. Like the second scenarios that I'm looking right now. I'm not considering. Well, the like definitely Korean person right now with like Gray right now running into like basically the element for member Juvia, like I'm considering it like the element or of like what like I'm considering right now member Korean person definitely for like the fight of like Naku against like Arya as well as like the fight of Gray against like Juvia and like right now my Korean person for both these fights to be like a one versus one fight and I'm like right but like Elsman as well as like Mara, like basically searching for like element for them, like I'm looking like instead like I'm looking like them like through their first like I'm looking like for like Elfman, both Elfman as well as Mara not running into neither Nasu nor Bergray, the location Bergray will be fighting off against like their element for members, but like I'm looking like Mara as well as Elfman like basically searching all throughout like giant castle. But like I'm looking like that would be like eventually ending up to like the very top location where like Jope as well as like those like multiple like people who wizards who were like the dark roads would be was definitely member three impression. So like they're like I'm different like maybe like it would be like I'm different like there at that point maybe like I'm different like Mara as well as like Elfman shocking finding out that basically about like the alliance about like since according to my book I'm different like right now there's could definitely be a secret alliance between like the Dark Fields as well as like the Fantasy Guild. So this is order for like Joker right now having access to like the Abyss Break lost magic. So definitely so like I was like most likely Mara as well as like when totally running exploring and running through like the giant castle and ending up in that precise top location where like Jope and those like Dark Guild members would be definitely would be like working on like the website magic and connecting it with like the relevant partners and everything. It's definitely one of the relevant. So like at that point, like I'm exploring like Marash as well as Selfman shockingly finding out about like the secret alliance between like the Fantasy Guild as well as the Dark Guild. It's definitely like the angels as possibility of like a scenario that I'm going to bring. And at that point, I'm going to bring that both Mara as well as like Elfman like teaming together and trying to that point I'm also like Elfman only straight away turning into his like these soul mode again, transformation mode again. And like I'm also like Elfman will be trying to like take out like the Dark Guild members who would be like with the ropes who would be like basically like working on that abyss break magic connecting to like the element of like the scenario that I'm so like those that list of like the abyss break magic like I'm looking like uh, maybe like I'm looking like as well as like a space soul power trying to like attack those Starfield members. But like at that point, Silvan was trying Jose totally interfering and stopping that attack of like Elfman. And at that point, I'm looking like a space soul Elfman versus like Jose fight is like the scenario that I'm looking in which like Jose would be like far too strong and looking like Jose probably overpowering Elfman. Like the scenario that I'm looking, and I'm looking like as like the beast soul Elfman would be like struggling against like Jose Ambas the like Mira as well, probably fighting alongside like Elkman and basically trying to bring down Black Story. But still, my Victoria predictions were like got like Jose as like the wizard trained to be like so extremely overpowered that they really like they won't be standing a chance at all. And then the and as Jose would be about to take the life of like most likely either Elkman or like Mara like most likely I'm leaning more to the possibility that like X-Men would be like sharply defeated and getting sidelined and like I'm going to bring in front of like X-Men like I'm going to bring like Jose would be like about to take the like Mara. So like just like X-Men probably getting that whole traumatic kind of like a shock of like basically of like the past incident of like losing to the Sana and basically X-Men totally fearing like the possibility of like him also losing Mara as well. So like at that very last second would be when I'm looking for an opportunity that Loki would be like showing up with like a suck to like the castle, like fans to giant castle, like the scenario that I'm doing, and that creating that absolute distraction for like that solely due to that like I'm looking at Joker at that point like getting distracted and that solely uh, that way like solely not surviving at that point is like the scenario that I'm looking at. And yet like after like Lucy would be and I'm still thinking about it from that like after like Lucy would be entering like the castle and then we would be like Loki not only bringing Lucy to like where Jose would be in the very top and like Lucy. Loki will be shockingly seeing like basically like a BeastSoul Healthman as well as like Maratoni suddenly being defeated and like suddenly badly injured and like getting sidelined and on the floor and all that like scenario that I was thinking. So like at that point is when Amber Different like essentially and when at that point like basically Amber Different like Jose to like totally make his like villain of kind of like a laugh and basically laughing at like all of those staircase members and saying that regardless of like Lucy like she would be like launching like the abuse for it man it can destroying like the adaptive like the paradise members as well as the paradise skills. But like at that point, this would be when like precisely like all the element four members will be defeated and like automatically straight away at that point itself like the giant fan will cancel like breaking apart and basically getting destroyed as like the scenario that ambassador is doing. I'm also trained. And at that point, all of the Fergus team members are stating in like escaping from like a gap. It's like the scenario that I was doing. And I was like, it wouldn't just be like the Fergus team members, like I was like, even though the element core members would be like thoroughly defeated, but were like still, even though they wouldn't have like any magical powers, like still, like them as well, like even like the element core members of the Japan as well, totally escaping and jumping out from like the castle and escaping. It's like the scenario that I was doing. So that like I was thinking like once like the castle would be destroyed, like I was thinking like it would be like Jose by himself that would be like the only person that would be remaining. But like his like entire structures like fantasy castle like would be like getting destroyed. And like it would be just Jose alone there by himself. But like in having like the entirety of like the players to face off against. It's like the scenario that I was bring up like Nasu standing in like the front beside Lucy while like the entirety of like, the characters will members except for like female characters will members that are standing behind right behind like Nasu and Lucy in like the scenario that I'm looking at. With like Jose alone standing against them. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like at that point like Jose totally getting seriously frustrated that like even if like element four members were like defeated and like his ability like magic strategy as well failed. And especially I'm still thinking about the mention that like Joseph's according to like Joseph's plan like Joseph would be like might have been totally planning on basically like basically through the slack hole abuse for like magic to like destroy like the entirety of like Magnolia and basically to quickly deliver and then to like quickly catch up Lucy and then to like destroy like to launch like the abuse for like magic and destroy like the entirety of Magnolia and to like quickly deliver Lucy to like her father and it lead to quickly get all that like, huge reward money that would be waiting for them at that point and then the, like that huge reward money for like the entirety of like the fans of Joten and at that point for Joten like the entirety of like the fans will be like permanently moved to like the region or like the area where like the dark hills the region where like all the dark hills will be significantly different. To like basically move to there would be like definitely Joseph's plan is definitely different. Especially because like Joseph is trying to like using that destroyed magic like Joseph is actually trying to like destroy like the entirety of like the Magnolia. Joseph would be like well, I'm fully aware that like doing so would like result in like Jose and his like fantasy skills being like permanently would be totally permanently getting removed from like the normal from the list of like the normal guilds at that point would be like one thing that I'm also thinking like Jose would be when I'm fully aware. So like I'm also thinking like Jose would be like also like constantly planning on basically after getting that handing over Lucy and getting that reward money to like basically to permanently leave for like transfer to like permanently leave like the leave like the no list leave the list of like the normal guild and basically head off to like the circuit where like also dark guilds would be like and basically there for them to also turn into like a dark guild to change like the fans guild into like a dark guild and basically for them to like work alongside with like the other dark guilds to like basically destroy all the normal guilds, destroy and bring down all the normal guilds. Might be like Joseph's like even current plan, even 60% like Joseph's current plan would be like exactly that. It's also definitely vegetarian. But still, anyway, no, the Thunderian version is definitely more like the scenario where like it will be Jose by himself with like all the element, all of the like purchase element for members getting defeated and like them all getting to be just Jose by himself and like confronted by like the entire vegetarian members. Like the scenario that I was looking. So like at that point, like Jose being extremely frustrated and Jose only feeling us like basically his like plans of so which to basically like spoiling the character's kids as well as like hand over Lucy and get the reward money. All that plan has failed to along the lines Joseph is feeling at that point. So like at that point, like Jose totally escaping like the scenario that I'm doing. And Natsu at that point would be like charging in towards like Jose trying to like attack Jose. But like I'm doing like Jose with like such as good ease like dodging Natsu's attack and Jose quickly escaping. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. I'm doing. Okay, so like the flavor of the brain person right now with like the element for member like they are falling madly in love with like Gray. Like the flavor of the brain person definitely for like right now with like Gray being strong enough to like basically even break like Julia that water as well as like basically like Gray. I'm looking for definitely to attack Julia as well, but like I'm looking Julia as well being like totally seriously strong that basically Julia as well will be totally quickly to be able to like protect herself from that grace like ice attacks like the scenario that I was different. Yeah, like I was like the scenario should be like for Grey to like totally figure out as to like what's going on as to like basically about like the mad crush that like Juvia has and Grey totally figuring out without much Grey delays like the into scenarios that I'm looking for and at that point I was different like since like at that point I was different Grey totally to tell Juvia to like basically like to totally use that to great advantage to like bring down like the giant like and to bring like great totally telling Juvia to like along the lines of like basically Juvia loves Grey so much then for her to like stop the giant. That would be along the lines like Grey would be telling Juvia and I'm for like Grey won't be like placing much hope in basically like even though Grey by then would have figured that basically Juvia loves Grey has a crush on Grey like still but like Grey don't won't be like expecting for Juvia to like actually like just by Grey just telling Juvia to like basically stop the giant like Juvia straight away acting accordingly like basically like even Grey won't be like having much of like a hopes of like Juvia actually doing it but like I'm assuming that to be like the exact scenario and Grey totally being shocked when like the scenario that I'm bring is for like the scenario that I'm bring is like for like Grey telling Juvia to like stop the giant Juvia straight away using her own element, water element, like power, like her, like basically cutting off her water element power access. That would be like definitely I'm thinking about the preparation that like each of like the elements for members like power number between like since like the I got to remember members it would be like precisely like the it will be precisely like the those precise multiple like people wearing like the black robe who will be like from like who will be like the ones that would be like precisely connecting like the powers of like the each of like the element for members to like the law of magic of like Abyss Spray, especially my Tundra impression. So like those multiple like people wearing like the black robe would be most likely dark Guild members. It's like the scenario. This is definitely my Tundra impression. So like I'm looking definitely Juvia, like when Grey would be telling Juvia to like stop the giant, like at that point I was thinking like Juvia straight away like consciously cutting off her access. Like I was thinking like it would be like to get through like Juvia's will that I'm considering like this like Juvia's like water element magic would be like connected to like the abyss break magic by those like people who were like the dark hope. It's definitely not the premise. So like Juvia has felt like basically remove that will and basically cutting off the access to like her cutting off the access to her water magic with like the abyss break magic. So, like the scenario that I'm considering that way this magic like being even more greatly slowed down to like the scenario, but like only like Arya's like magical like wind magic element, single element connection alone would be like at that point would be such a percent connection to like connected to like the mystery magic like the scenario that I'm going to call it like so like that is how I'm going to bring like Grey would be fighting off against like the abyss kinetic is like the scenario side I'm doing. And even after that, like I'm supposed maybe I'm supposed like even after that, like Grey totally leaving Juvia or like the other possible scenario that like maybe Grey totally thinking of taking advantage of like the situation and basically Grey telling Juvia to like basically to fight alongside Grey and like Grey skill to like basically bring down like the to bring down like the giant like basically along this lines as well numbers but maybe Grey telling Julia. It's also like a positive that and the different. So that's the scenario then I'm supposed to bring like and my bring pressure that that's the scenario then I'm supposed to bring like by the time like where I'm supposed to bring like Elfman as well as like Murat like probably we that are running into like the south location where like Joseph would be like on the screen while like Murat as well as Elfman would be getting into trouble. Like maybe at that point I was doing Juvia as well as like Gray like eventually running into like making it to that location and saving like either Elfman or Murat. It's like also like the other possibility that I'm so that way, like Juvia would be like making that ultimate betrayal, straight only due to Grey, like Juvia making that ultimate betrayal against like the entire with the fans. It's like also like an invincible scenario that I'm looking. So that way, like I'm looking like both Grey as well as Juvia, Jose even trying to like attack like Jose is also like a possible scenario that I'm looking. Yet like Jose will be like a thing or yet like I'm looking like also like a scenario to be like eventually like the by the time like Arya would be like destroyed and basically that way the not only like Sabi's brick magic will be like getting destroyed, but like also like I was saying like switching to my impression for like the giants will be powered by like definitely like the four elements. So like I was saying like the giant won't even be able to like stand up. So like I was saying like, without like the connection to like the powers of like the element four members, it's also like about to do that. I was saying that like once like Arya would be like defeated, like at that point at that point, I'm also bring like the giant to like come crashing down. This like the scenario that I'm also bring. And with that force escape, on the way down to bring like at that point, like the retired still members to like escape, and the element for members to like escape. Still, right now, my remembers that since like Juvia has like that mad cut on Grey, like I'm also bring maybe for like Juvia to not escape, and basically Jose like totally being extremely angry with like Julius like the scenario that I was doing. He had like a it was like Julius betrayal is also like an event of the scenario that I was doing. He had like Jose like leaving and escaping and before Jose would be like escaping like Jose totally like saying something to like Julia. So Julia is also like about me that I was doing that we will like ensure that like Julia pays for like her betrayal. We'll get down the line like Amber's friend Jose saying and basically Jose escaping. It's like the scenario that I was looking at. So like in such a manner and so maybe for like an also for like a possibility of like Julia that way eventually ending up being like a permanent spirit guild member. It's also like a possibility that I was looking maybe like that way Julia ending up being like the newest member of like the fairy tale split. It's also like an individual final possible scenario that I'm looking on the game. Okay, so like you're looking at the brain friction right now with like they seem to struggling against like the superior power of like Juvia, like I'm thinking but least the thing about the mission that like, it will be only like Juvia's like ultimate love towards like Grey, which like I'm different like Grey to totally the using to like basically to like manipulate Juvia into like stopping like the giant like the scenario that I'm looking. I'm just literally Grey right now not being strong enough to be able to overpower Juvia. It's like the scenario that I'm living. So like it will be through that whole manipulation that I'm definitely putting that Grey would be like topic and defeating the element or member of Juvia. This definitely my victory. Would also like the Filipino Australian version right now for like Julia's like sad backstory continues to rain as well as like Grey right now as well saying the very same words that like as for like Grey as well feeling seeing rain as gloomy like the Filipino with the rain version right now is that like this to be like too much for Julia and that like Julia could take that I'm looking right now Julia totally venting out at Grey. It's like the scenario that I'm looking like. We are right now considering only waiting out and shouting out at Gray how like basically Gray is exactly like how all of everyone she knew from like the past that basically they all left her like all of her friends from like the past who all left her because of the rain that always follows her like basically along such lines of different that Gray is no different. Like basically, along first lines are different. Like Julia only shouting at Gray and basically wending out at Gray's like the scenario that I'm looking. While in tears, in the rain is like the scenario that I'm looking. And at that point, I was like Gray totally responding back to like Julia to the crying Julia's like scenario that I'm looking. And what Gray would be telling Julia is that basically that if your friend, if like Julia's friend had basically left her he was to like the rain that follows her, like basically then there were never Julia's friends will be along the lines of the friend Grey will be telling Julia. They were never a true friend will be along the lines they will be telling Julia. And that Grey and the friend telling Julia that this. And then I was like telling Julia that like a true friend is someone who never leaves your side, like no matter what you're going through, will be along the lines. I'm just like Gray telling Julia, and at that point, like Gray would be saying this, like Gray would be like remembering like Natsu and Lucy, especially because of like the current situation of like Lucy, where like and solely due to like Lucy, solely to protect Lucy, like the fairy tale still members are each of them are going through this like extreme suffering and all the situations and everything. So like basically like with that connection happening at that point, like Gray will be like saying this dialogue and Gray will be remembering Lucy as well as like Natsu, as well as the entire fairy tale still members, while Gray will be saying this dialogue to Juvia. It's like the scenario that I'm remembering. And this this point to be like a shock and a shocking realization of like a point for like Juvia in her life. It's like the scenario that I'm remembering. Like Juvia at that point will be finally feeling that absolute like acceptance that like Juvia might have been yearning for her entire life. That like the scenario that I'm remembering. Juvia getting that acceptance uh, for like the first time in her life through Grey at that point when Grey would be saying that I love this like the scenario that Amber is only putting and my personal reaction. So like I'm delivering that acceptance like would be like most likely my personal reaction that acceptance would be most likely the tree that might have been like might have been like that might have been missing in like Julia's life causing like Julia's like the rain that followed Julia around all these years ever since like Juvia could like remember and like the rain might have been following Juvia around, especially when the famous and it might have been this lack of acceptance that Juvia got might have been like the key, that missing key factor that might have caused like Juvia to never be able to like control like the rain that always follows us. Especially when the film. So like at that point when Grace says Ambassador Grace the same style again, at that point like Juvia getting that feeling of acceptance through for the first time in her life through Grace. And at that point like Juvia suddenly realizing suddenly being able to like control like the rain and at that point the rain stopping like the scenario that I'm doing. So like that's like scenario that I'm doing and at that point I'm definitely putting like the parallel to happen how like basically like just now itself like how like Elfman was like finally able to like control so it's like beast soul transformation full body transformation power like and like the parallel happening with like through Grace style of like basically like while and in Grace style of bring great only telling to yeah like basically he definitely Tony still finds a range gloomy, but like they would only telling Juvia that like that's not a reason to like leave your friendship to leave a friend would be along the lines they would be saying and to like Juvia and this had the example of friend like allowing Juvia finally allowing Juvia to be able to like control rain as the rain that follows up as well. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for. In that way, like Juvia as well, being able to, from that point on, like being able to like decide basically being able to like bring rain at her will and basically to have rain not happen as well with her will is definitely to bring out and remove rain with her will like Julia finally gaining that control. It's definitely control of her power at that point is like so the actual interface like the scenario simple scenario that I'm looking for like bring another and definitely I'm going to bring like Julia at that point like and loving Grey even more than ever through that dialogue of Grey's like the scenario that I'm looking and definitely I was the still sticking to my strongly sticking to my work impression that like once this like current fandom guild battle will be over definitely I'm looking like while the remaining element for members as well as like Jose would be like retreating and escaping and like the fandom guild giant castle would be like destroyed still I'm looking like definitely Juvia would be totally staying as like the scenario that I'm looking and Juvia ending up being like the newest at that point would be ending up being like the newest member of like the fairy tales guild is like the scenario that I'm looking and I'm looking at. Okay, so like definitely my reaction right now with like Juvia right now venting out at Gray about like how like the fandom lord like Jose like accepting Juvia for who she is. Like basically like I'm going to bring like definitely that definitely might have definitely not been like an acceptance at all. It's definitely my referring it. All Jose might have seen in Juvia might have been a weapon at all. A weapon is definitely my reaction like for Jose to like use Juvia as like a weapon, like a powerful strong weapon maybe the only interest that Jose might have had on Juvia, like Jose might have like definitely not at all like truly at all like accepted Juvia at all. Even to and this might be the reason for like I'm looking that while Julia, even right now, to the person would get only thing, might get only thing that basically Joseph had actually accepted Julia, like the actuality and the truth of it would be like totally different. It's definitely my opinion, and this might be the reason for like because like of Jose as well not genuinely at all accepting Juvia at all would be like the reason for like the praying that follows Juvia around still keeping on following Juvia the being of the foundation. Like it would be that acts absolute true genuine acceptance by someone of like Juvia the way she is would be that my impression would be that key factor that would only be able to like stop like the non-stop rain that follows Julia around. Especially my able for Julia to gain that control over like when to bring out her for Julia to be able to like using her will alone like basically for Julia to be able to like bring out rain clouds and basically make it rain and basically send the rain clouds away. Like for her to be able to do that using her will, like definitely that genuine through existence would be like that feedback for that would be like required for us to be able to like do that and gain that control. And like I'm specifically my to mention that like for her to like get that genuine through acceptance right now without us today through great is like the scenario that I'm going to bring. And like that would be like the point where like Julia's life will be like changing. It's like the scenario that I'm going to bring. And I'm okay, so like the clean up to the ambition right now with like section as well as Mara right now making it towards like Gray as well as Julia are like I'm definitely like right now I'm looking that them to like totally try to like make it towards like defeating like finding and defeating like the fourth and final and fourth member like area. But like I'm looking definitely just to give my personal impression that like they won't be like initially running into like the making it to like the first room where like Natsu will be fighting off against Arya, but like instead like I was going like them eventually ending up running into like the first room and at like the very top where like Jose as well as like those multiple that people wearing like the dance robe would be and they will be like definitely definitely members of the membership. So also the new Korean person like through the journey of them for like they would be like eventually running into that success and make that way ending up into that professor room where Joe will be like I'm looking by then through that journey like in between that journey like I'm looking like being as well as like Juvia totally bonding and like totally that absolute bond of friendship like I'm looking totally forming between like Mira as well as like Juvia. There's also like the Indian scenario that I'm looking over like and my very interesting. Definitely like I'm looking like Juvia and the friend like totally not only betraying like the element for but like I'm looking like Juvia would be totally risking her life to like basically in that fight that I'm looking would be taking place against like Joseph with like the team of like Elfman BeastSoul Elfman and like Mara and Grey as well as like Juvia versus like Jose. That fight that which I'm running to like eventually happen like definitely Juvia was only like risking her life to definitely put was totally putting herself in like with the front of like some sort of like intense situation where like I'm looking like Juvia would be totally throwing herself into like the front lines and basically risking her life to like basically protect like Grey. It's like from like the powerful attack of like Joker's like the initial scenario that I'm also bring. And definitely I'm also still Juvia to like definitely survive and definitely S-Man as well as like X-Man as well as like Mara will be totally witnessing this along with like Grey as well like how passionate like basically how passionate like Juvia is and all that. It's definitely my book memory. This would like eventually end up with like I'm with even still think my book memories on that like once like Jose would be like defeated. I mean like the once like the giant castle of like Huntsville would be like destroyed with like Arya getting defeated. That and I was going to be Natsu by himself. That I was going would be like still even though Arya's like the top element for member like still I'm looking Natsu still by himself like somehow that managing to like still overpower Arya like the scenario that I'm looking for. So the win match of Arya like the scenario that I'm looking for. And at that point like once like the giant castle of like Fantasy would be like falling apart and getting destroyed. Like the Josei would be retreating, and at that point, definitely I'm considering that. with like I'm looking like with Gray as well as Gray as well as like Elfman as well as like Marabai, then would have seen like that extreme passion that like lies within like Juvia and like them only seeing that absolute fairy tale material in like Juvia is like the scenario that I'm considering. Definitely they would be like only at that point decide they would have by then like would have already decided to like basically to take in like Juvia as like the newest member of like the Patriots. Is like the scenario that I'm looking at. And definitely after like saving using Arya, like I'm still my brother using especially using Arya that like using it like in magical powers like I'm looking like the magic that's dissipated to the air will be like or collected and like a bit of that a certain extent of like macros like magic as well still will give like a get back and that way master macro being saved and at that point I was like most likely considering maybe it would be like most likely I'm thinking it would be like Mara that would be like telling asking macro about like them bonding like Mara them bonding Juvia to be like accepted to like the perpetual member. Get that's like the newest member like the scenario that I'm looking and Macro totally just taking a look at like Juvia and Macro straight away at that point like totally telling them that really she is already accepted into like the perpetual like in the scenario that I'm looking for. That way like Juvia being like the newest perpetual member like in the scenarios that I'm sitting on to okay, so like definitely now I'm breaking right now like for like the person that like right now trying to destroy like steer top of like the height of where like the raiders as well as Lucy is in like I'm going to like definitely that person will be definitely Loki is definitely my book and those are right now like the steer top being brought down and like an angry like I never before seen like angry Loki like basically shouting at like Lucy that basically I'm telling this is that basically you are coming with me along the lines like the scenario that I'm looking like villain or having like Loki never before seen Loki that's what I'm saying topic like the scenario that I'm looking and it will be solely due to like Loki being like extremely Loki is like extreme genuine like concern for like the entirety of like the fairy tale film members like except for like single the film members like the remaining majority of like the characters film members like they are sacrificed for solely for like solely to like protect Lucy like against which like totally towards which like definitely like Loki will be like extremely against that like solely due to like Lucy being like a celestial wizard like Loki won't be able to like at all see bring itself to at all see like Lucy as like a member or like as a friend or like as a member of like the fairy tale series worthy of like protecting the like the by putting like the life on the line of like the entirety of the remaining fairy tale series members would be like Loki's like mindset, especially with gravity, and Loki would be extremely enraged towards like Lucy right now for all the seeing like all the sufferings of like the remaining characters members for Lucy definitely member friends. So like I'm looking right now like with like the extreme harshness in like the steel doors are being like attacked like I'm looking like an extremely steel doors like when it will be brought down like I'm looking like Raiders as well as Lucy shockingly seeing like an extremely enraged like I never before seen like Loki. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for again on the camera. And my prayer predictions for like this to be like only 1% that I'm playing. Like the other percentage that I'm playing is for like maybe like if like the person like trying to like bring down like the steel so also like the hideout of the traders and to see if possibly maybe being like iron disease. That's also like a possibility that I'm playing. So like if that's the scenario, then I'm going to bring like what like Loki might have sensed and like the best reason for like Loki running away will be most likely due to like Loki, most likely like noticing like the absence of like that specific fan still member I am getting. So like I'm looking like Loki might have been able to like maybe sense like the person either sense like the person of like I am getting from a distance or like I'm looking like Loki might have totally might have been able to like might be so extremely brilliant that Loki might have been able to like foresee such plan B of like from like Jose's side to like basically send Iron Kajil after like Lucy. It's also like my premise. So like I'm assuming maybe like Iron Kajil right now might be like the person trying to like bring down like the scale down to like the head out of like the rate of NBC. So like I'm assuming like if that's the scenario, then I'm assuming like scenario to be like a rate of trying to like stop Iron Kajil and basically and they feel like easily like totally without much without any difficulty at all, like totally overpowering and defeating Rita is like the scenario that I'm doing. And as like Iron Gajil would be about to like forcefully take away Lucy, like considering at that point, like precisely Loki finally making it. And basically at that point I was preparing like a Loki versus like Iron Gajil fight in which like I was preparing like finally like I was preparing like a Loki like I'm just trying like to totally basically like get some sort of like a major power upgrade like the scenario that I'm doing. In that fight between like Loki and Digil, like initially and Digil like totally offering Loki and like and Digil totally making fun of Loki because of like, Loki not being strong enough at all. Loki is like the scenario that I'm doing, and that totally pushing Loki to like the point where like Loki will be like totally bringing out like unlocking some sort of like hidden potential within like Loki, and like that way like Loki getting some sort of like a major power upgrade using with which like I'm like Loki for quality to like totally like strike it back at Iron Gazil and like totally easily offering and defeating Iron Gazil is like the scenario that I'm going to think. So like I'm going to maybe by the time like Natsu will be like finally defeating Arya like on the other side like basically Loki would have totally offered and defeated Iron Gazil. It's also like a local scenario that I'm going to like. So like I'm going to Iron Gazil getting that at the stop with like some extra strength, even just strength like happening with like Loki and Gajil like probably or getting offered and defeated by Loki. And at that point, like while like the remaining of like the element four members except for like Juvia would be like retreating along with like Jose as well. But like at that point, simultaneously during that point itself, like when I'm looking like in parallel, like basically like Iron Gajil as well, even though he would be thoroughly offered and defeated by Loki. Like at that point, Iron Gajil as well, totally retreating and escaping is like succeeding in like creating and escaping is like also like the scenario that I'm working on paper and by the frame which is like the what would be better but the name of the frame. Okay, so that the film is frame question right now that's not like Natsu right now struggling against like areas like air space magic like the invisible magic or like area about the bring as to like how exactly Natsu might overcome what certainly for example to like be able to like fight himself overcoming that like airspace magic and as to like how Natsu will be figuring it out like I'm going to like almost like the Navy for like Natsu eventually deciding to like send out like just like without fighting in that close range manner like I'm looking like Natsu maybe coming up like literally coming up with like the strategy to like send out just like planes towards like Arya, so that like at that point, Arya might be using his like constantly using his like airspace magic to like defend and block himself, protect himself from like the fury attacks of like Nasu. So like I'm supposed to usually coming up with strategy to like instead of like straight away charging and trying for a close range attack, which will be blocked by like the airspace magic like Nasu instead like basically at from at a distance like basically like launching long range fire attack at like unlike Arya, so that like while Arya would be focused on like using his like airspace magic to like protect himself. Like at that point, like Natsu totally like charging him close from like the because like while Arya would be using his like airspace magic against like the long range flame attacks of like Natsu. Like at that point, Natsu being able to like see exactly the range of like the airspace magic it would be and like the exact area where like area is not protected by like the earthquake magic. So that like at that point after sending like the long range flame attack like Nasu probably jumping and basically jumping towards like area and basically towards like the side of like area where like area won't be having like this like airspace magic to like protect himself and basically and that Nasu totally attacking from that side in like that open like that in that area where like area won't be having his like won't be protected like basically they are like NATO totally striking area with like a close range with like a close range like a fire fury attack with like the scenarios that I'm bring like that way like and the million also bring like area won't be able to like use his like airspace magic to like protect himself in like a 360-degree kind of like a manner to surround area with like fully with like airspace magic in like a 360 or like a 180 manner, like Arya won't be able to like do that. Like Arya will be only able to like the range, like I'm saying like the airspace magic would be having like that limited range where like to like the extent where like it can protect Arya, definitely not the range. So like from the like Nasu intelligence figuring out like the side where like uh, the exact area where like the airspace, the limit of the airspace, defensive magic airs, and we have to through that Nazis long range flame attacks and Nazi figuring out that the unprotected area and basically Nazi striking from that side to area and that way like eventually Nazi like taking out and for and defeating and taking out areas like any of the possible scenarios that I was bringing